Hello and welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I'm your host, Gary Morgan. With me, as always, my good friend Jim Stam. We're getting ready for the holidays. How you doing, brother?
Doing all right, man. I'm a little disappointed. I thought I would get like a hype video intro for this. So I don't know, Gary. You let me down a little here. I thought that was how I thought that's how people did things now.
I mean, I expected to trade you at the deadline, so I wasn't going to go ahead and go that far. But
let me guess, there were no takers. There were no serious offers.
I mean, don't get me wrong. If you perform well, I'll probably, entertain extending you. But I'm just saying. I mean, I guess we have to talk about that a little bit, don't we? Maybe that's where we should start. We should probably start with Celebrate Gate because the Pirates just keep bringing it up over and over again. And, I saw Ghost Load wrote about getting rid of Bob Nutting, and I don't think that it's going to happen. I'm surprised. He got it trending and everything. I thought, sure.
I'm surprised it hasn't happened. We may have to cut into the show with some live breaking news.
I mean, he does wield some kind of power. I don't know if you saw this or not, but you can take it seriously when Ghost Load says something.
Mm-hmm.
Important people reached out to him to tell him they totally agree.
That's what I heard.
The funniest thing is, first comment I saw under it was our buddy James. Mom and Dad don't count. I lost it, dude.
Yes, it was perfect. But yes, let's get back to our old double V signing here, Vince Velasquez.
Velasquez. So yeah, the Pirates put out a hype video, and I couldn't resist because I wrote something about it too. It's just a culmination of everything. They can't do anything right. They put out a video of O'Neal Cruz hitting a home run in winter ball, and the only thing I could think was, man, I don't like seeing him in Dodger blue. Man, I don't like seeing him wearing that uniform, easily swatting a ball over that high-ass center field wall. And it just immediately sent me into a tizzy thinking, this is going to happen again in about 6 years. They can't win for losing right now. So to go head out and sign a guy like Vince Velasquez and then put together a hype video, they just don't read the room. Jim, this fan base is not going to dance in the streets for a 1-year signing. I don't care who it is. You could sign Andrew McCutchen and do a hype video if you want, but that would be based on what Andrew McCutchen has been to this organization already. You couldn't sign somebody like, I don't know, Michael Lorenzen on a 1-year deal and bring him in and do a hype video and have anybody be excited. I'm sorry.
Well, what was funny about it too is I had some people, because I watched it, and I think I retweeted with 6 words. I put something like, "I'll be blunt, this is embarrassing."
Yeah.
People were, that don't follow the Pirates that must have seen the tweet were confused, because they were and they must not follow baseball too, because they were they must have watched the video and they were is this guy good? Is he because you're watching the video and you're thinking, certainly with this type of production, this must be a good ball player. And I'm I hate to break it to you, he's not. I had people commenting from other fan bases, the White Sox and the Mets and the Cubs, and they were just oh God, this is bad. I'm sorry.
The thing is, it's ultimately, and we joke about it because the Pirates make their own jokes, man. I mean, they force you to laugh at them doing some of this stuff.
Yeah,
but it's not fair to the player.
Not at all.
This dude signed a 1-year contract to come in here. I guarantee you he's thinking along the same lines as Jose Quintana, Tyler Anderson. He wants to come in here, get right, have an opportunity, turn his career around. He's thinking next year he can be the guy that signs for 2 years, $18 million somewhere because he did well here. I don't even put it like out of the realm of possibilities. They have done very well with veterans that they've brought in here. And I personally look at his track record. I don't see it. But again, as I said when we signed the guy, I didn't see it with Quintana either. So I'm going to keep an open mind here.
Yeah,
But
it's not a knock. It's not a
you put
knock
out
against
something
him.
like that. How the hell is anybody supposed to take it seriously?
Well, yeah, and then all of a sudden, he becomes the new face of people being disgusted when they see a Pirate that they don't like, or that, because he's now the Josh Van Meter of this year, or
before he even toes the rubber.
Yeah, and so it's just not fair to him. It's certainly not digestible to the fans, and I don't know. Like you said, I think you said it perfectly, which was you got to read the room a little bit, right? I mean, you can't.
One would think, man, like it's things like that. It's things like, you're like sitting in 27th place in the league for, free agent expenditures this year. And your competitors are sending out tweets of like, oh, we signed this guy for 9 years, $330 million. And Pirates social media is going, look at the new scoreboard.
Right.
All it does is prompt fans to go, yeah, great. We're paying an extra $1 a ticket for it. That's wonderful.
Yep.
It's things like that. It's not like you can't eat things like that on an individual basis. It's not like any one of them is a huge deal. But when you just look at the conglomeration of everything they put out there, it's just laughable. It really is. Yeah, especially a couple days after your best player says he wants traded. You're like, got our guy Vinny. Dude, he ain't our guy no matter what he does. We know you're trading him at the deadline. Like, I don't even want this to be an angry show, but we know you're trading him at the deadline. This ain't your guy. You signed him for 4 years? First, I'd be pretty mad at you based on his track record. But if you signed him for 4 years, okay, I'll give you our guy. You signed a rental.
What's weird is why necessarily him? Like, there was Choi and then there was Santana. Like, why poor Vince Velasquez? So again, just the oddity of it in general, and then you stack it on, you keep stacking these things, right? People want to read the next chapter in the book, and you're just like, oh God, this book just keeps getting worse. Should I keep reading it? And so that's all. I hope he does well. Hey, obviously that's good news for us, good news for the Pirates. But the poor guy just wants to come in, clean slate, fresh start for his career, turn things around, and I don't know. We gave him the Michael Jordan "I'm back" treatment. So,
I think it's what I said, that Pirates fans are undefeated in setting up one true outcome, which is anger. Either he sucks, or he doesn't suck and they trade him, or he doesn't suck, they don't trade him, and that's a huge mistake. No matter what they do with this one player, they have screwed up. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, there's not really many good outcomes that can come from it, that's for sure.
No, and that's, it's their own fault. I'm not going to sit here and say that. I don't blame the fans for reacting that way. But, man, it's a 1-year signing. You don't act like you've done anything special here.
Yeah.
Let's take a break and let's come back. Let's try to get back on the rails and be positive a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting Christmas time, Gary. Let's spread some cheer while we're here too.
Yeah, let's do so. All right, back at you on the Pirates Fan Forum. It's Gary and Jim, and we're going to talk about something that I personally think is pretty positive, and that is the starting rotation. I know, it's the Pirates, I know. But try to get out of your head a little bit, because we've been talking about them needing to sign free agents, and we're all pissed off that they announced Vinny Velasquez is going to get a shot at being a starter and everything. I get all that. Believe me, I do. 2023 to me is all about improving over 2022 and getting to 2024 knowing that I've got some proven commodities to fill a lot of slots. And the starting rotation to me is a place where I feel you can really take that a step forward. So, Jim, what I want to start with here really is I want to list off who I feel is kind of in play to be in the starting rotation. And then we'll kind of talk about what we think it'll be at the beginning of the season and then what we think it'll kind of wind up getting to by the end. Okay?
Yeah, and disclaimer with all this is look, we don't know what's going to happen the rest of the off season here or spring training, but we're at the point where we can kind of see what it might be right out of the gate, and then not too far down the road what it could be. So I think it's a good time to do it.
As good a time as any, because let's be blunt too, it's the Pirates. It's December 15th. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're done making moves. But they ain't going to go trade for Chris Sale tomorrow. They're not. Most of what you see is what you got. And I think if they make a move, we'll adjust from there. I don't think it's going to change a whole lot.
Right.
So let's start. This isn't going to be completely inspiring because I'm just going to read off names. This does not mean I think every single one of these people has a claim to be a starting pitcher here. Roansy Contreras, Mitch Keller, JT Brubaker, Vince Velasquez, Bryce Wilson, Zach Thompson, Johan Oviedo, Luis Ortiz, Mike Burrows, Cody Bolton, Quinn Priester, and yes, I'm going to add in Wei Shi-Yang because
you just like saying his name, Gary.
Well, they picked him up in the MILB portion of the Rule 5 draft, and he's got some major league experience. He's also got options, and that type of guy tends to get some action sometimes, especially if you don't think one of your prospects is ready to really start the clock on yet. So out of all that, I think the starting rotation will kind of have three that I think are locks. Mitch Keller, Roansy Contreras, and JT Brubaker. Vince Velasquez, I guess, is close to a lock. If
Sounds
only because,
like it.
Well, it really depends on how you took that. I've seen some people took it as he's got an opportunity, like Josh over at Bridge to Bucktober. He was all on his soapbox about that, basically, that it sounds to him like he has an opportunity to win it. I didn't take it that way. I took it more like we brought him in here to be a starter, basically.
I took it that way too.
Either way, I think we know what's going to happen. He's going to come out of spring as a starter. And then my fifth one, I'd go Johan Oviedo, if only because I felt like he got a little bit more of a run last year. And he is also a guy that only has one option left, and I'm not 100% sure I want to burn it right away. So that's my starting five. What about you?
I think the big. I think it's Gary. I think to start off the year, that is probably what you will see. I took the Velasquez comments as he will be in the rotation. Could something happen there with Brubaker? Maybe. I just don't think they're ready to go there yet with him as far as transitioning him to the bullpen. I think he will be in the rotation, and I think they're going to see how he does. But he is now at that age, and he's had enough of a run as a starter. If it's not working out, I think they may transition him out of that.
It has worked out, though, really.
Yeah, I'd like to see him. I think, and we'll talk about this, is like, I think once you start talking as Brubaker as like, what we're looking for is first the consistency part of it, right? He's got to be able to put it all together.
Yeah.
I think Brubaker starts looking a lot better as your fourth or fifth option in a rotation, which hopefully that's what maybe we'll see, right?
I could agree there for sure. I think Brubaker has had stretches in every year that he has played where he's been the best starter they have. Problem is, he's had stretches in every one of the years that he's played where he's been one of the worst too. So I think he's a guy that he's missing the button to just keep the shirt together. You know what I mean? Like he just has one.
That's fair.
He just has one issue that crops up no matter what, and he just, for whatever reason, can't get past it.
Well, here's some. Let me
he's
just
a
say
major
this.
league pitcher, one way or another.
Yeah, and like what I saw from him last year, which was kind of frustrating, because if he could have just gotten away from like the rocky starts, the first and second innings, because it was almost like, well, they're just going to ask him to wear one today, and the next thing you know, he actually makes it through like 5 innings and didn't give up any more runs. It's like, dude, if we could have just avoided, you starting out, getting down 3, 4, 5 runs in the first 2 innings. Well, then all of a sudden at the end of it, he actually pitches 5 2/3 and ends up with 4 runs, 4 earned runs.
It's funny too because he was such a victim of bad defense too. I mean, like, not just O'Neal Cruz throwing balls around and whatnot. It seemed like no matter who played behind him, they were going to kick the ball all over the place, and it would just get crazy for innings at a time. And he'd overcome it sometimes. He wouldn't overcome it other times. But, like, it was pretty brutal what happened to him on several occasions last year.
It was. There was, especially like the first 10 starts or so, I felt bad for the guy.
Well, that said, a real solid, good starter overcomes that stuff. And the thing about JT is he just doesn't have the strikeout stuff consistently enough to get himself out of a situation like that that's created. Mitch Keller, I think that's one of the things that he really showed last year he did possess, was the ability to kind of rear back and get that strikeout when you really need it.
Yeah, well, there were times where Mitch Keller, he actually, if there's one thing I'd like to see him do is clean up a little bit on the base pads. He would get himself in trouble, and then natural ability would help him find his way out of it. JT Brubaker doesn't have that luxury. So, yeah,
at
with
least
Keller,
not that he's shown. And at 29, I don't see him showing up. Right?
Yeah, we're talking about the stuff you're born with a little bit, right?
Yeah. That said, I do think he's proven he's a major league pitcher. He's got, he'll be in this league for a long time. I personally think he'll find his way to the bullpen. We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But I think he'll start the season in the rotation, and I think rightfully so. He's earned his place there. Out of everybody that we're talking about right now, Mitch Keller for sure. He's probably going to be your opening day starter. I would be on. Actually, with the hype video, maybe it's Vinny.
Oh God!
But it really should be Mitch Keller. They really should reward him and let him have it. Rowanzi. Boy, we had a little bit of the pitch tipping towards the end of the season. I think probably a little bit of fatigue. He was stretched a lot further than he's ever been stretched. I expect him to probably carry 150, 170 innings this year. And I think they'll let him. So we could
And
probably see another end of season fatigue issue with him, I would think.
we know what the big thing with him, Gary, is learning how to put guys away, right? Like you get up in the count, you got to put guys away. You can't screw around too much. I think it, man, if he gets that part of it, look out.
Putting guys away and also understanding the art form of not missing by a country mile when you're trying to get soft contact or a swing. You know what I mean?
Right,
If you
right.
there's an art form to it that it takes guys a while to learn, and I think first of all, that's probably one of the cleanest rookie seasons I've ever seen from a starting pitcher in this town. So
It really
I'm not
is.
about to start complaining about Roansy Contreras or questioning what he is. I really thought his game was spot on last year, and if
Yeah, you.
anything, the Pirates may be detrimental to his progress. Yo-yoed him a little bit and didn't need to.
You look over the years as Pirate fans and you try to think of names of guys who fared that well and showed that well out of the gate. Um, it's a short list, man.
I
Short.
don't got a lot of them, man. I really don't.
No,
Even Doug
no.
Drabek struggled for
Yeah.
a couple seasons before he really caught on. John
Yeah, I
Smiley
mean,
came right up from Double A and really kind of went after it.
um, Chris Benson, of course, he got the Tommy John and then things never got back on track, really. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to think of guys
It's a short
with a
list.
pedigree, right? So
Yeah. So I'm going to take that and be pretty happy.
you want to talk
Um,
about Oviedo a little bit?
yeah, Oviedo.
He's such a boy. He's important.
He's important. He was an interesting pickup last year. A lot of people thought Nunez was kind of like the feature of that trade, but I felt it was more Oviedo. Um, Pirates, of course, have never told us which one was their feature. Why would you? But
Right.
it felt to me like Oviedo was more of the sure thing in that group. So I like him, and I think he's got a good shot. I like the way he looked towards the end of last year. He really cleaned it up. There was a couple games, Jim. I think you and I were actually at one where he was pitching and he was just all over the place. Like
Yeah.
he couldn't put it over the plate to save his life. And then
It's so
next
weird.
outing, he's just firing bullets and everything's going where he wants it. And it's indicative of a young pitcher. So
Gary, we might have been at a game where he walked the bases loaded. I could be wrong with that, but I think like
no, he
there was
walked
an
four in a row. We were there. Yeah.
okay. I could have sworn like it just completely left him, which has happened with him, which is why the Cardinals thought he might be better and it suited in the bullpen. But you can see why the Pirates thought there was something there. Now, can you
Well, they
get?
aren't wrong.
Yeah,
He has a big arm. He really
right.
does. I like the kid quite a bit. I'm more than happy to have him be one of the opening five. I think he, especially since the beginning of the season, you probably really only need four. But
Yeah, early on for sure.
but I mean, if I'm the Pirates, I force the issue and use five anyway. I mean, just if you're really going to care about the inning counts on these guys, just use five and let them have that extra day of rest here and there, and just work your way through it.
And
But
maybe he probably, if we ever do a show before the season starts and maybe do like guys we're really intrigued by, I think he might make my list.
he's
So
up there. So I think that's the opening day rotation. I'm not going to talk about Velasquez because, I would underwhelm you, to be honest with you. I don't see it. Again, I just don't. I've heard a couple people tell me that he's got a two seamer that they think could be refined and maybe turn him into something. That seems to be the MO for Oscar Marin when he's trying to help somebody, is to teach them a two seamer.
yeah,
But eventually, when you're trying to have everybody do the same thing, it just tends to not work, right? Especially when it's somebody that he's done well enough to keep getting paid every year somewhere. He's
Yeah, I mean
probably
yeah, and I mean clearly what they're doing is they're IDing guys that they think that of things that they like to see in their pitchers, like you said about the two seamer or sinker heavy guys, and trying to pull that out of them.
yeah. Problem
That's
is,
the MO.
overall, his barrel rates are awful
I saw that.
on every pitch he throws, and yeah, if he works out, great. Here's the thing, though, because Jim, we're gonna skip to like how we see this thing progressing a little bit. And we'll probably end up having to touch on some of the fringe guys too that get kicked out of the box as well. But as you're moving through the season, Vince Velasquez, we already know he's either going to get traded or he's going to get moved to the bullpen. He'll move out of the way. JT Brubaker's another guy who, again, if he doesn't really like show it this year, you could see him moving to the bullpen.
Sure.
Pretty easily.
And it might suit him, Gary. I mean, we'll see.
No, it really might. I don't think we're at a point where like you're denigrating somebody by saying they're a bullpen guy at this point.
No,
it happens to most people who think they're starters. Really, if you're honest about it. But
they all think they're starters, man. Like most of those dudes.
Yeah.
So that's can you buy into it? Can you accept it? Can you realize that it maybe will help you flourish? That's an individual thing.
And it's a different discussion, the bullpen, because you can't just take all these failed starters and move them to the bullpen. The bullpen is relatively full already. So I would say, like, you got a guy like Bryce Wilson's probably in the danger zone here. He has 0 options.
I hope he is, Gary.
Well, let's just talk through it for real. Let's not just be jaded, because he had a few good starts last year. He had some really horrible ones too. Thing is, he's still a kid. He's not a free agent until 2027. So by DFAing him, you're actively giving away a ton of control on a pitcher that you think maybe could be something. I don't see him as having the kind of repertoire I want to put in the bullpen. That's a different discussion from JT Brubaker, who I think does have the stuff to go in the bullpen, could ramp up his velocity. Bryce Wilson is a guy that's always going to live on contact. And I just don't see that working well in the bullpen for short stints. I don't see him making the rotation. I think we're going to be looking at a DFA of Bryce Wilson either very soon for an acquisition they make or before spring's out. And he might be a guy that you're trying to stash in AAA. But man, looking at the options, I don't know that I care one way or another.
Yeah. I'll try not to be jaded with him. Quite honestly, he strikes me as a guy you do keep in AAA for depth, a guy that you can call up in a pinch if you have to. And quite honestly, he's a guy that if you get in a 8-9-0 game, things go haywire early, you can put him in there. I mean, like, and let him pitch 3 or 4 innings. I hate to, the
thing is, he'll never clear waivers. That's the thing. And the reason I say that, and I don't care either, like I said, I don't care if he gets taken, but he'll never clear waivers and go to AAA because he's young. He's got all that control, and somebody will think they can fix him.
Yeah, because he's still young.
Yeah. So somebody like the A's will take him. The A's are worse off than we are right now. So they'll take him. And you know what I mean? Somebody will take him.
Right.
And they'll probably try with him. Because even if you do get him to clear waivers, what good does he do for you? Like, he's in AAA. Now he's eating up a rotation spot from, these other guys that we're going to talk about. And if you use him, if you call him up and put him back on your 40-man, It's not like you can just send him right back down. You
Yeah.
know, then you're calling him up. You got to keep him
He's going to have to show something in the spring, Gary. I really,
if he makes it to spring. That's the thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm assuming that part of it,
Yeah,
which
there's a big part of me that just don't think he's going to make it to spring. Luis Ortiz is kind of fringe. We saw
man
4 starts from him, man. Like
has
he looked great in 3, unhittable in 3. Like, oh my god, Doc Gooden just showed up in 3, and then one of them he looked like every worst nightmare of Vinny Velasquez I've ever had.
it. But those 3 that you're talking about, undeniably impressive. Like blown away, impressed by him. Like
I was too, Jim, and I was hit really off guard because that's not what he did in the minors. That is not what he was in the minors. He always had great stuff, but this was a guy that had like a 4+ ERA. Like, he wasn't just laying pipe the whole way up here. It was honestly a guy they knew that they were going to have to protect from the Rule 5 this year. They knew they wanted to, so they figured why not, toss him on the 40 and call him up towards the end of the year to give you some innings and give him a little bit of a taste. I don't think they expected him to
no,
pitch more than one game. But
and
after
then
he pitched that game, it was so good they couldn't do anything about it, and they just left him there for 4 games until
well,
he found.
how could you not want to see another start and then another start? I mean, like
Right.
And for anybody that's not aware, I mean, look, he's still very 2-pitch dependent, and that's going to be a big deciding factor on where he goes on your staff. Whether he's going to be a starter or a bullpen guy. Clearly, I mean, if he can get something like a changeup going and developed, I mean, talk about an exciting guy. Jeez, Gary, he looks so stinking good.
He's kind of like he's one of those dudes that, like, if he hits, like if you pop on him, boy, it changes the complexion of everything. He's an unexpected potential stud starter that you did not necessarily see coming. And I mean, I'm not Murphy. I'm not Anthony Murphy. I don't sit there watching videos of these guys, 24/7. I've seen enough of him to know that he was worth looking at. I never expected what I saw last year. That said, what he did in those 4 games, especially the 3 where he was really good, he filled your heads with a bunch of false expectations. Like, I'm just telling you, pump the brakes. He isn't going to start right out of the gates, and he shouldn't. And I don't care what he does in spring. It's not what you think yet. Trust me, he needs the changeup to come along.
Right.
And he will. If you really want him to be a success, if you really, really do, just get out of your, like, Pirates are always doing dirty by the prospects mindset and just let it go. Okay? Like, this is not a Super 2 guy necessarily on top of your head. If it happens, it happens. But, like, he ain't ready. I'm just saying.
He's got to go down there and just like you said, he's got to develop a third pitch, which he's working on, and then just the consistency across the board is going to be big. He's a young guy. He's going to have to keep building on what he did. But man, we got a taste of him, and he's a game changer if things go well.
He could very well be one of the first call-ups, really, when they need a starter. Very possible.
What's great about him is he's actually somebody that projects pretty well anywhere you'd want to use him with his stuff.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the bullpen, he could be one of those guys too, right? I mean, he's got
absolutely
that kind of, he's got that kind of ability.
Now let's talk about another guy who's not young, 29-year-old Zach Thompson. Now, he's not young, but as far as his major league career, he's an infant. He's got 3 options. He's not a free agent until 2028. I got to tell you, despite what you watched last year, really, and this is another guy went through stretches where he was the pitcher you wanted to see if you were hoping for a win. There was a couple weeks there where he was literally the best one they had. He's not going to make this rotation. No way in hell is he going to make this rotation. And his 3 options tell me he's going to start in AAA. And I think he's going to be a yo-yo guy all year. I think he's going to be back and forth from AAA up to the majors over and over again. And his neck is going to hurt by the end of the season. What do you think?
I think maybe he'll stick a little bit more in that bullpen just because of what he can do. He also could provide you a spot start.
I think when we start talking about the bullpen, really, which we're not going to do in this episode, but when we really start talking about the bullpen, it's a lot more full than I think people think.
It is. I'll slant slightly more towards that. But the options, I mean, hey, they'll use them if they want to and if it makes sense. So
you need that too. It's something really valuable that this team has not had in far too long, and it sends them to the waiver wire repeatedly, looking for people that can just give them innings. You got to have guys with options that you can bounce back and forth just to accommodate for injuries, let alone tired arms or just wanting a spot start or, instead of Miguel Yajure coming up to pitch the back half of a doubleheader, you've got Zach Thompson.
Well, you mentioned injuries, and that's where a guy like him can come in too.
He's got experience. He can come up there and just do it.
Right. So he would be a guy that, if nothing else, is good insurance. So you're just not at least starting a complete schlep off the waiver wire.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, man, let's take a break and then we'll come back, jump right back into it because we got other players we want to talk about, and I want to kind of keep building up until we get to the end of the season.
Yeah, because when it gets to the end, boy, that's whenever you should start getting excited a little bit.
Should. All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. It's our last episode before Christmas. We're taking next week off. Came down from the bosses that we get next week off, Jim. So we're just going to go and chill with our families
that's right.
Not talk about Pirates for a week.
Little self-care about the Pirates. Every once in a while, you got to do that.
You have to. And if something major happens, maybe we'll hop on and do one of those Spaces things. People like that when we did it. So
yeah, we did it for I think when the Reynolds stuff broke, and it was a really good response. So if something big happens, we'll figure out a way to do it.
Right. Screw our families. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. It's only Christmas.
Right. I mean, Ben will be 6 next year too. What's the big deal? Right.
Totally. He'll understand.
Absolutely. So, all right. So let's get back into it here. Mike Burrows is the next one I want to talk about. He killed it in AA. And then got to AAA. I felt like he kind of maybe took a little bit of a step back, got slapped in the face a little bit with a little bit better competition. It wasn't bad, though. Just never really kind of got back to the level he was in AA. I still love his future. I still like him as an option, but he's not going to start out of spring either.
No, right? And again, you're talking about guys get promoted. It's later in the season. Could just be something where a little bit increased competition, a little bit maybe tired. They'll let him start in the minors. They should. Yeah. And make sure everything's good and on track. And then that's what we were talking about. But after we get into August and September, who knows? Maybe even probably August, September-ish. I think we can see him, and I think people should be very excited about that.
And then Quinn Priester, 2019 number 1 pick. It should be no surprise that we should be excited about him coming up. He certainly is talking a good game. He's talking about wanting to be a National League Rookie of the Year and all that. I'll be honest, he's not ready either. I think he needs a little bit more AAA time.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to get it. I think that's a no-brainer. I think he could look like one of the best pitchers they have, and it's not going to happen for a multitude of reasons. Go ahead and take the Super 2 thing into account if you like, or whatever. But no way in hell is he coming out of spring. That kind of rounds out the players here, I think, that are involved. What do you think? It's a decent mix.
It is, and then if we get to that point in the season and you maybe start seeing Burrows and Priester and seeing them get some starts, assuming there's the health with Contreras and Keller, you start putting those other 2 guys in there. Gary, those are 4 pretty good names.
I look at the end of the year, and we obviously don't know everything that's going to happen. You don't know who's going to get hurt. You don't know moves that are going to get made. But I look at the end of the season, and I realistically see a starting 5 of Mitch Keller, Roansy Contreras, Mike Burrows, Luis Ortiz, and Quinn Priester. And that's not a stretch. I'm not thinking of guys who could jump from single A here. I'm talking about
this isn't making a lineup out of your minor leagues and projecting them 4 years down the road and littering your whole lineup with the guys. These are guys that are legitimately right close on the doorstep, and they have ability.
But even that is a better rotation than what we're starting with. But think of everything that has to happen for that. Like JT Brubaker, you'd have to make a decision with. He's either in the pen or he gets moved. You got Velasquez. He's either in the pen or he gets moved. Wilson's probably moved. Thompson, who knows what they've done with
that. And then we spent time with Oviedo, and where
Oviedo,
he might be.
Is he in the bullpen? Who knows? That's kind of where we're at. We're talking now about, like, instead of just being excited about seeing certain prospects, now you're starting to talk about, well, they're really going to have to move somebody out of the way. Like, they're going to have to actually perform, because you may very well have somebody like JT Brubaker pitching like he did last year, going like, well, he's a 5th starter. Like, no problem. This is a 5th starter. That's what he is. He looks like one. He acts like one. He pitches like one. Well, you may very well have, a situation where Luis Ortiz is killing it in the minors. You need a spot for him, and Brubaker is the worst member of your rotation. So you've got to make a decision.
Yeah, and anybody, save for, like, some of the teams with the embarrassment of riches, anybody that's trotting out a JT Brubaker as your 5th starter, that looks pretty good, and it speaks pretty well of what you've got in front of him if that's where he's at. Now, right now, he's probably, he's
probably your 3rd.
Right yeah. So if that happens, then things have gone really well.
Sure. And we've watched this game a long time. Like, are we probably a little too confident that Mitch Keller's not a question mark? I suppose. I'd like to think that in year 4 he's got his arms around what he is, and I think he laid down a lot of evidence last year that he's in a good place. But you never know what an off season's going to bring.
Could he take a step back? Maybe, but I don't think he will.
I don't think he will
either. I think he'll be any worse. I don't think he'd be any worse. And if he's just what he was last year, that's still pretty good.
Yeah. That's the point, though. The mix is better. We've been talking about the Pirates for a long time. We always talk about like, oh, they don't have this, they don't get that, they don't go sign these people. When I really look at this rotation mix, I'll be honest, Jim. Like besides like a big lefty, which I still think they desperately lack, and I think they will ultimately need if they're ever to really do anything. Um, I don't know that I would be crying about Michael Lorenzen signing someplace. Like, I wouldn't bring in any more right-handed pitching right now, and I mean that for the bullpen and the rotation. I just don't see it right now.
Yeah,
There's
it
too
would
many of these guys I want to get through here this year.
be really nice to look in that starting rotation and see that lefty. It'd be really nice to see it.
Sure.
They don't have it. Um, and look, this shouldn't be need to be said, but health is so gonna ride so much rides on the health of some of these guys too. Um, let's just hope that everyone stays healthy and they don't get hit with a ton of injuries, because that's the one issue with all this
It
is
really
that
matters too when the injuries happen. Like if you're talking about like injuries like in spring, well, you're gonna get Zach Thompson. Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
now you have an injury in like say June, you might very well get Luis Ortiz. It really depends on when you start having some of this attrition start to
and
add
you,
up.
and you just don't need a rash of them.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the
yeah.
big key.
That said, injury when you start to get to the point where your team is a little more full, okay? And make no mistake, we look at this roster, you and I both know this isn't a championship roster. We're not delusional. But there's enough here right now that I feel pretty strongly you want to get eyes on a lot of them. There you want to see more. Like I may not 100% believe that Rodolfo Castro is a star, but I want to see more Rodolfo Castro. In other words, I'm not mad that Baltimore signed Adam Frazier because we needed a second baseman. I want to see Rodolfo Castro. So I don't need a free
Yeah,
agent to come in here and play second base. I feel that way about a lot of this lineup, a lot of this roster.
I want to give Castro 500 at bats.
Yeah,
I want to see what it looks like. You
I
know.
want to see G1 Bay. I want to see a lot of these guys, man. Like that. I think that's kind of where I'm at. Is I get like that they have needs. I know they do. First base. I think the reason we kept saying that it was so obvious is because there wasn't anything obvious coming. There wasn't anybody they were going to hold back, at least not in 2023. So I understood going out and really addressing that via trade and free agency, and they did, and I'm happy they did. I still think they could use like a qualified right-handed veteran outfielder. I think something like that would really be a nice thing to have. Looks like they're thinking they can get by with Miguel Andujar. I'd prefer they don't do that, but okay, that's what they're going to do. Aside and catcher, we all know catcher, but what else do you want? Really, they're not going to go and get, even if they were going to spend money, they're not going to go out and get this shortstop. Like they're not going to go out and get a Trey Turner. You got O'Neal Cruz, and like
Well, yeah. I
maybe
mean, if
O'Neal
you
Cruz moves, but like, are you going to do that to him right now? I don't think so.
no, I think they're fully prepared to just see if he sinks or swims this year at short,
Sure.
and then go from there.
Well, so I mean, I'm seeing and I'm feeling. I'm not just like I'm not saying, oh, I'm reading Twitter and people are mad. I've been mad too. Why aren't you signing anybody? Then I really sit back and I look at this roster and I'm like, okay, well, we don't need a shortstop. We don't need a third baseman. I wouldn't bring in a second baseman because even if Castro were to be decapitated tomorrow, we have G1 Bay and Nick Gonzalez and Leover Piguero, and I want all those guys to get an opportunity. First base is addressed for right now. The outfield is a little thin to me. You got Reynolds for now.
And then some, and then some
Jack
question marks.
Sawinski's interesting. Who
Yeah,
knows?
but there's a question. There's a question there too.
So outfield's what I would do if I was going to do anything, and catcher.
Well, I think what people did too is, when Sherrington made some comments about going out and getting a pitcher, and what he probably should have prefaced it by saying, "Now these will still be pirate type signings," whereas like we're gonna go get these guys, but remember, it's gonna be, it's not. Don't go get all crazy on me here. And people took that, heard it, and went, "Oh, well, now this is the year we're going to go get all." So that happened too. That was a big part of it.
That's true. He did set it up on a tee, didn't he?
Yeah, I think. Yeah. And then at least, yeah. I mean, so he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't as far as saying anything, but it raised expectations.
Like the thing is, I mean, I'm really struggling with how I want to word this because like it's not as though I look at this roster and I think, well, yeah, we're good. I can absolutely see places to upgrade. It's more just if I upgrade, I'm not going to get to see what we've tried to develop here because there's no place for it to play. Well, I can easily go get a second baseman that's better than Rodolfo Castro right now. Easily. But can I get somebody that's going to be a better second baseman than I think Rodolfo Castro could be? You know what I mean?
Well, you're going to look, people, and trust me, I get in these moods too where you're tired of seeing it have to play out. And the patience is gone and people don't want to do that, but this is that last little bit of figuring that part out with some of these guys like Castro.
Right.
I'm not an Andujar guy. I mean, I think it but that's not a big deal to me this year with him.
Oh, if it works out, they will be stroking themselves like you would not believe on social media.
Wait for that hype video. Holy smokes.
Oh my Lord. And I mean, it'll just be crazy. But I mean, I think they could improve the bench for sure. I think there's room there, but again, at some point you're going to have a place for Andy Rodriguez to play. You're going to have likely a place for Henry Rodriguez to land, or Henry Davis to land this year. You're going to likely have to have a place for Nick Gonzalez at some point this year. Leovar Piguero has been on the 40-man for 2 years at this point. So it's make or break.
A lot of really good names and a lot of guys that they've got to find some things out. They're going to have to do it this year.
Yeah, you absolutely must. And so, I mean, like, I don't know. I'm conflicted here. Like, I definitely see like ways they could upgrade, but I also kind of see why they might not want to at certain areas.
Right now, right this instant. Yes.
Yeah. I still think the best way to like really improve your team though is to really improve your pitching staff. I would not have signed Vince Velasquez. I would have rather seen them go out and spend some money and bring in a quality left-handed starter. That's what we've called for this whole time. So I'm not going to backtrack now and act like I don't care about it. I still think it's a swing and a miss to not have a left-handed starter. And I don't really want to hear the percentage of times that you play a series and you don't face the lefty anyway. I just think not having a left-handed starter, to me, is derelict of duty. You should have one. It's something that I just believe in.
Yeah, and that would have been the only kind of signing this year that I would have supported from like you're going out and finding a guy and giving him a 3 or 4 year deal, something like that. But that would take a big commitment to do it. Those guys aren't cheap, and the Pirates kind of are. So,
Yeah.
that's a bad combination. But that's where they could have done it. Like these 1 year deals,
The funny thing is they've already got prospects that I skip over mentally. I have to force myself to think of Travis Swaggerty. I have to force myself to think of Tucupita Marcano. And through no fault of his own, I have to force myself to think about Kanan Smith and Jigba.
yeah.
Like they have more guys than I think a lot of us are thinking about. And
Well, it's good. It's good in a way that those are guys that start getting pushed down a little bit, because those would have been the guys 4 years ago that you would have been pinning some false hope on, in my opinion. Not that some of them still can't work out, but I don't see any of them as like game-changing guys. But that's who we would have had in our system and be at the top.
I don't disagree, Jim. I just think they're guys that they got to work through. And, I think it's pretty clear to me just looking at the rotation and the options and the backup they have really built in here. I feel like the pitching's going to be better this year. We didn't really talk about the bullpen much, but it's pretty loaded. It really is. I mean, they've got a lot.
What you saw out of that bullpen at the end of last year through overuse, injuries, and a couple guys that probably shouldn't have been in it, I think you can forget about all of those factors, at least to start the year, and it's going to look really different in a good way.
I think it will too. So, and that in and of itself can make a mediocre team look a lot better than they are.
Oh my goodness! If you can just get some decent pitching, Gary, like starters,
you talked
and
about
bullpen.
all those close games that they blew last year, and what happens if they don't? You turn 100 lost season into an 85 lost season, overnight. So, I don't want this to be all roses and pansies here, but they definitely have some work to do. There's a lot of development left to go here, but I do like what I'm seeing as far as at least the progression of the pitching staff goes. And we wanted to try to have a positive Christmassy type show, and I think talking about pitching was really the best way to go, because to me that's where most of the improvement needs to show up if the team's actually to improve.
Yeah, and look, we know the Pirates still have a ways to go. But if you can't look at the end of next year with a rotation and the guys we've talked about and not feel like that's a pretty good foundation, at least on the starting pitching side of things, which, is everything.
Yeah.
Then you're being less than fair with what you're looking at, in my opinion.
I mean, I'll leave you with another weird note, because let's say like Mitch Keller, Rowanzi Contreras, JT Brubaker, Johan Oviedo, let's say all four of them shove. All four of them are actually good. Like, to the point where you can't go, okay, Quinn, it's your turn. Oh, come on up, Mike. Give us a shot. That you could very well and picture something where you get to the end of this season and you've done little more than just get feet wet on some of these prospects. Is that good or bad for this team? Because going into 2024, I don't think you want any more question marks about some of these guys.
It'd be nice to be able to partially baptize the Burrows and the Priesters of the world.
Yeah.
So I still think there's going to be room to do it. And I think they'll just have to make room to do it.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be interesting to watch play out this year. And it's going to be so nice, like when you look down to AAA and you're not calling up Miguel Yajure. You're calling up potentially a number one pick or somebody that's pitched like one at least. And I think there's something positive to be taken from that. If for nothing else, this team has a little bit of room for error now with the pitching staff that they didn't have last year. And, if it works out and they actually do take a step forward, it should probably start to change some hearts and minds, even if the payroll doesn't look any better.
Yeah, like the big indictment would be is if they go through this year, they sort some of this stuff out, they know where they have glaring needs, and then they still don't go out and do much.
Absolutely.
Then that's the problem.
Yeah, you're dead right. And if they come out of this year with glaring needs, like the one that I keep coming back to is first base, because they've only given themselves a 1-year solution here at first base. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure either of them on their own is an actual solution, Santana or Choi.
No.
Together
I
think they make a nice solution for this year. But one of them alone, not so much. Well, if Nunez doesn't take a step forward, or Mason Martin doesn't take a step forward, or whatever, they've got to be prepared to move somebody over there. I know you think Davis will end up over there, but
I do.
For what it's worth, Davis doesn't. And I think they've shown us that where the prospect wants to play matters a lot. Otherwise, O'Neal Cruz wouldn't still be at shortstop. So I'm going to kind of hold back on that, thinking he's going to wind up at first base until I see it. But they're going to have to make a tough decision that somebody moves over there.
Davis doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that wants to not be a catcher. It's very much in his DNA, and we talked about starting pitching they don't want to go to the bullpen. It would be very much the same situation there. But I think if he hits and they've got catching figured out, I could see it. But it's early. We'll see.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about it right now. Point is, that's a position right there to keep your eye on, and the outfield, because that outfield needs to start taking shape. And I mean, aside from Brian Reynolds, that outfield needs to start taking shape. And you need to start having some guys step out and become fixtures. Like, they need to be less question marks. If you don't have that, then yes, they're going to have to invest in 2024. Have to.
Well, and I mean, all of a sudden, the one guy we are talking about as the fixture out there has now said he'd prefer to play elsewhere. And it's already not a good set unit out there from what we see today. There's question marks. So that could be another big question mark.
Right. But that's why they're going to ignore his request. So
that's right. It's a long 3 years.
I don't think it'll last 3 years, but for their sake, the other outfield prospects better step up and make it less relevant.
They'd have to.
Yeah. So, hey, Jim, Merry Christmas, brother.
Yeah, man. You too.
Thanks for another great year. Honestly, we've done really well here, and really enjoyed doing the show. And thanks to everybody that tunes in for the live chats on video. I got to be honest, Jim and I talk about those chats for a week afterwards. Sometimes we're like, I can't believe how cool that was. So many people were there. And it's really nice that everybody shows up, even as we've jerked you around and moved our show every once in a while. So we really appreciate it.
But yeah, I would just want to wish, because, obviously we won't be doing a show next week. So thanks to everybody that listens. And truly, I hope you guys all have a Merry Christmas and take some time off and try to relax. We all work pretty hard. And it's nice to be able to just take some time off, be a homebody, watch TV, watch Christmas movies, spend it with your family, and eat a little food. It's Christmas.
Absolutely. Let's hope for some snow.
Yeah, not just cold.
All right, Ben. Take it away and do it right because Santa's watching.